Everyone, and thank you for joining today's Nyanvardhini session. Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan, for taking out time for this. I would request Ms. Priya Ibe to say the introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Shalini. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Priya. So, today I'm asked to introduce the speaker of the day. Our speaker is Mr. Srinivasan Tirumurthy. So, he's working for Siemens Limited, Bangalore as an ethics and compliance officer. He has 22 plus years of experience in finance, accounting, and compliance domain in total. He is an associate member of the Institute of Company Secretary of India. He holds Masters in Commerce, Masters in Financial Management, and Masters in Business Administration. He is also certified in Forensic Audit from ICSI India and KPMG uh, we would be able to, I think that Srinivasan will be able to help us in that. He is also certified in Global Privacy and Data Protection Auditor from FDPPI, March 2021. He's very active in FDDPI forum, and with that, I hand over to Mr. Srinivasan for the session on personal data comparison across country and good practice on data privacy.
Thank you so much, Priya. Is it audible, Shalini?
Yes, Mr. Shivan.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you, Navi sir, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Shalini, Ramesh, and Priya, who were for coordinating for all your time and efforts for this session. You are doing all this in the background. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who is taking part of this session. Thanks for your time. So I'm just going to share personal data. I'm just going to compare between few countries, how personal data is defined across different geographies. So most of the definition are common, what we are aware, like mobile number, address, etc., etc. But I just want to show you, there are some other interesting aspects which is being defined within the scope of sensitive data and personal data, just for our understanding and knowledge. And also, of course, some do's and don'ts and some good practices on data privacy.
Srini, don't worry about the admission. We will take care, myself or Shalini. Okay, you just go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ramesh.
Yeah.
So I think this is just a mind map of what is personally identifiable information. Nothing new in this slide, because most of the information we are going, if you are going a certification course through FDPA, PPA, or to other forums, I think we all know personal information of natural person, whether it is identified directly like address or date of birth or mobile number, or indirectly or through any identifiers, through any national identification numbers, etc., etc. I think even HIPAA has around 18 identifiers. I think most of the information here mentioned is either their identifiers or information which can be identified from natural person. So the list is not an exhaustive, just for your reference. With this, I want to show you how personal data and sensitive data is being defined in different countries. I've just selected few countries which I find little interesting. The source of my reference, the source of my reference is there in my headers. So Ukraine, if you see Ukraine, they say personal data is defined as data, subject's name, address, education. Even the educational qualification also comes under the scope of personal data, and any risky data. So they are not using the term as sensitive data, like how other data protection laws define. They are using the term as risky data. So when you say what is risky data, it says any sensitive personal data includes race, ethnic origin, nationality, and biometric data. I think this is quite familiar to us, which is similar to other laws. If you go to next one, once again. So if you go to the next one, Israel, data regarding any personality or personal status and the intimate affairs. So that's how they defined. It includes personality and personal status. Personal status could be an economic status of an individual as well. So there was a Supreme Court judgment in Israel which says even the pseudonymized data is still personal if the third party has a key allowing it to re-identify the data. For example, if they could do a reverse engineering of the anonymized information. So quite interesting is they use the word database owner. They don't use the word controller, which is again equivalent to data controller or data fiduciary as per the Indian bill, PDPP. And they use the word possessor. So they don't use the word processor, which is equivalent to processor, data processor, how we can infer with other laws. And another interesting aspect when you go to the sensitive personal data is any intimate affairs, economic position. So economic position of the person in Israel is also a sensitive personal information, and personal status and vocational qualification. So even now the qualification details are also considered as very, very sensitive. If you go to Turkey, quite interesting is any information related to any identified or identifiable natural person. Yes, that is very common to us. We have read that in GDPR and other laws as well. If you see the sensitive data, it includes race, other beliefs and clothing, membership association, previous criminal conviction, information related to sexual life or convictions or security measures in the sensitive data. So the word clothing is defined as a sensitive information as per the Turkey data protection law. So why, if you see, we could get some reasoning. The reason clothing is treated as sensitive personal data is that clothing preferences of individuals may be based on their beliefs, local traditions like wearing hijab or growing beard, and processing of such data may cause the data subject to face discrimination or unequal treatment. So that is the reason within the Turkey, they also defined the word clothing under the data protection definition of sensitive information. If you see how Thailand differs, defines, they have, again, Thailand is same. It's a data related to any natural person which can identify such person, whether directly or indirectly, excluding the data of deceased person. So they are very clear. They are not including the scope of deceased person. So natural living person is what they are saying. And when we see the personal sensitive information under Thailand, any status related in cult or religious or philosophical beliefs or disability or criminal records, which they have defined within the scope of sensitive information. Next is quite interesting slide. If you see this cluster of these 4 countries, even if you see Uruguay, any kind of information, not only of natural person, also they are including the word legal entity. So that is quite interesting in these 4 cluster of these countries. So the reason why legal entities being included as a natural person, as a within the scope of personal data, I was trying to check in Googling, but I could not get a direct answer. I was also trying to talk to one of the colleagues in South Africa to see why their law as defined included legal entity. One of the reason I could get is there are a lot of frauds which are happening in these countries, which is quite visible in the Latin America countries like Argentina and Colombia. So probably because of that, the government wants to protect the companies, because if they can use any of sensitive information of the companies for the fraud purpose, maybe because of that reason, probably they could have included even the legal entity data as a personal personal data. South Africa says, if you see living natural person, okay, and where applicable, an identifiable or existing jurisdiction person. Very, very interesting. They are using the word existing jurisdiction person. If I want to interpret this word, probably I could say a company which is as good as a going concern. So the moment if a company is getting into a liquidation or winding up, probably that may not be covered, is what I could interpret from this word, because they are using the word existing jurisdiction person. And any personal opinion or preferences, any private correspondence, views of another individual about a data subjects, the views of another individual about a data subject, that is also included in the scope of personal data within the South Africa. And information related to education, even they are including educational qualification, medical, financial, criminal, or employment history within the scope of personal data. Argentina, Even Argentina also includes the word legal entities within the scope of, in addition to natural person, even the legal entity data is also within the scope of personal data. So if you see in Argentina, sensory data which reveals racial or ethnic origin or philosophical or moral convictions. Even moral conviction is also included within the scope of sensory personal data. Colombia is also similar, the Latin America country. They are also saying in addition to natural person, they are using the word determined or determinable natural person or legal person. So there is also a reference in Colombia. They are using the word data source, which is again equivalent to a data controller or data fiduciary, or there you data operator, which is again equivalent to the word data processor in their Data Protection Act. Sensory data affects the owner's intimacy or whose improper use might cause discrimination. Another common thing I could interpret, maybe this is my understanding, why legal entity is also included is, except for South Africa, in Colombia, Argentina, and Uruguay, even the databases, whether automated or a manual databases of an organization, has to be registered within the scope of data protection authorities. So maybe that is the one point which I could link. And in addition to that, the frauds which are happening in these countries could be the another factor why they want to include the legal entity data within the scope of personal data. Just, I want to take even Australia. When you see Australia, it says whether the information or opinion is true, even the opinion or information is true or not, on whether the information or opinion is recorded in material form or not. Even if it is recorded in a material form or not, the same is being included within the scope of personal data. And sensitive data is including biometric and biometric templates. Even the biometric templates is also considered within the scope of sensitive personal data, philosophical beliefs, and criminal record of a person. So I just want to see how our neighbor stands out in these definition. Pakistan is also having a personal data protection bill, and they have not even passed an act similar to India. So they also have the defined, I think they also have their own Information Security Act. From their angle also, they have included the scope of personal data. So data includes any content data or any traffic data, like any email content filtering service offered by internet service providers, website, licensing data is also included within the scope of personal data. Very interesting is Pakistan has classified India as a inadequate country. So any personal data cannot be transported to India from Pakistan to India is another interesting aspect which is being defined within the scope of the Information Security Act of Pakistan. So India is an inadequate country according to them. So anonymized information, encrypted information, or a pseudonymized data, which is not personal data. I think this is also quite similar when we compare the HIPAA or other GDPR Act. Another interesting is they have not separately defined, Pakistan has not defined any sensitive data, but the use of password is there. Like how we have Information Security Act, which is also defines password as a sensitive personal data. Pakistan is also having password within the scope of the definition, including the payment instruments, financial information, etc. So just if you see Bangladesh, again, our neighbor. So date of birth, which is quite common to us, mother's name, father's name, signature, birth and death registration number, ETIN, tax identification number, or electronic or digital signature, security related questions, voice print, they are also coming under the scope of personal data. They do not define anything separately as for sensitive data. Bahrain, I think quite interesting. Any information associated with the identification of a specific person, which includes personal secrets. So personal secrets is also very, they have included. Another thing, even Navi sir used to say, personal data is not owned by a person. It did not refer to that. But if you see Bahrain's data protection law, it's even a symbol or a letter or a number or images or a sound, which is belonging to the individuals. Even if it is belonging to the individuals, that is also defined within the scope of personal data. Their sensitive data, of course, is quite similar, which extends to banking operations such as PIN codes and ciphering codes, which must be encrypted at the application layer. They are also included within the scope of sensitive data. Any questions? Please ask me.
I think
yes, sir.
Namit, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. So there was a recent case when I think in Germany, where the parents of a child named the child something, even Elon Musk named the child something very different. I'm not recalling the exact name, but it was kind of a mathematical, name of a child.
Mm-hmm.
Now, name is basically a personal identifier. I mean, is considered in most cases of personal PII information, right?
Mm-hmm.
PII data.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Bahrain, you have included specific forms of symbols here.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how does it interpret? It's basically it's like name is supposed to be have a domain has to be within the range of alphabets. Now, when numbers come into that picture, how does this change the nature? Will it still be considered personal data in that case? Because numbers can be generic, right?
Are you saying name is having also a number?
Yeah.
How do
you just hold on? I can even actually cite the name what he kept.
Fortunately or unfortunately, now everything is numbers only.
Actually, it's
0 and 1.
I'm just typing this in.
Just made fun. Funny remark. We are between 0 and 1, oscillating.
I think here information in the form of symbols could be like we have device identifiers.
Yeah, I have posted that name what he has kept in the text box. I mean, it's difficult to pronounce what it is. So that's the name of his child. That's what he has kept, his name, the name of the child. How do we it's like encroachment into of one kind of our information into other. How do we manage this, like under this personal PII data?
No, I think it is a name, right? A given name. So that will be a part of personal information. What do you think, Mr.
What is the name, Shalini? That is, what is the name?
I've posted it in the text box. So.
1 second.
It's difficult to pronounce. I don't know how to pronounce it.
No, Namit, may I interrupt?
Yes,
there
sir.
were British kings whose names were Edward II, King Charles III, etc., etc. So that third he has converted into Roman. So that could be the style of pronouncing that particular name. So history is there where the kings used 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, etc., etc. Those were the names of those particular kings. They were known by those particular names only. So I don't find it strange. Yeah. Just how to pronounce that could be a question, but it is falling under the category of name.
Sir, the second thing is it is specific. It is restricted to a specific script, and it is not generic in nature. Like a name can be written in, let's say, in a local dialect like Punjabi. It will be written in a specific script. It will be different there. The name pronunciation might be similar, but the written information would be different in a different script. Make sense?
Yeah, but here he has used some capitals and then mentioned 2, 3, etc. Whatever is his understanding. So,
Namit, can we go back to the question you asked? Like Dr. Limai is saying that, it could have numbers and pronunciation could be different, but it still falls in the category of personal data. So, I mean,
but that is specific to Bahrain, right?
Yeah, this
Bahrain.
is
Yeah, like Mr. Anant is making an interesting point here that it could be in, Bahrain language and might have numbers. What do you say, Mr. Srinivasan?
Yeah, that's all. I also feel because it's specific to Bahrain. Maybe why this is different. Maybe we have to do little more deep dive.
Okay.
But definitely, name is definitely coming under the scope of personal data, and you can see even the symbols, letters, which is assigned to any individuals. That is also they are considering as a personal data. So.
I'm just pointing out to the fact that there could be automated systems which could be accepting a certain range of certain inputs, like validation inputs, like the name has to be within alphabets and should not contain numbers and etc. I mean that should be that could be a constraint with automated systems, which are processing PII.
Okay.
You are right. Yeah, that way you are.
Probably, yeah. Maybe if I could get some information, I'll come back to you. Thanks for the question.
Okay.
Just a second. So whenever we talk about data privacy, we also talk about data security or information security or a cyber security. So if you see, there is an overlap between data privacy and information security because data privacy protects any personal data of an individual or a natural person. Information security protects all kind of data, personal data or non-personal data or any kind of business data, commercial data. So the overlap comes from the technical and organizational safeguards. So we will discuss that quickly in the subsequent slides. What could be the technical and organizational safeguards? Of course, very interesting thing is you can have a security without privacy, but you cannot have a privacy without security. So whenever we talk about data privacy, there should always be a data security as well. Some of the technical and organizational safeguards, which is not quite new to us. I think even when we went for module A, our PDPA also talks about all these controls. So just I want to highlight a few controls, which is this I have taken from the Federal Data Protection Act from BDSG, Germany. So this is from the Germany, not from the GDPR, but I could not pronounce this is in the German language. So it's called as BDSG. The admittance control. This is nothing but the equivalent to the physical access control. So when we access a building or a location which contains personal data or a sensitive data, so basically we have this access cards, we have this turnstile or an intrusion detection system or a video monitoring or the motion sensor. So generally we should have a proper admittance control or a physical access control. The next is the moment we access a building or a location, we try to access a system which contains personal data or a sensitive data. So of course, such system should have a proper two-factor authentication. Only the authorized people should be able to access the system. It could have some kind of a chip code or a certificates or auto lock or user ID. So if you see our banking sites, it is having auto timeout functions, auto lock, okay, where the computer and IP address can be tracked, okay. The next is once I access the system, once we access the system, next is we try to access the data. So say for someone wants to check what is my boss salary, can that be done? No, it should be on a rule based, on a role based. The authorization should only be on a rule based and role based. Only it should be on a need to know principle. So there should also be a tie-up with the central systems which should have an electronic workflow, meaning if an employee getting separated from a company, it should tie up with the HR tool, and then the access should be revoked automatically. That should how the data access control should be there technically. Disclosure control, if you see the personal data which cannot be copied or read or altered without any authorization. So if a data is being transmitted from one country to another country, it should be with adequate protection, with adequate encryption. So some of the things is electronic transfer or data storage media or encryption or a secured mode of transmission, FTPs, file transfer protocols, transmission protocols, network intrusion systems, okay, data leak preventions, DLPs, firewalls. So tamper proofs. For example, there are organizations like Iron Mountain, which stores a lot of personal records of many companies. So in such cases, whenever the files are being transferred, you should have a proper tamper proof packings. Okay, this is also one of the requirements within the scope of disclosure controls. Input control. The moment I access a system, who has changed this, who has posted the entries, there should be a proper date stamp, trial stamp, a time stamp, who has entered the system, who has made the modification on what date. All this there should be proper audit trail to capture all these things. The system should have a proper audit trails to capture all this input controls. Contract control. Again, when a data controller or a data fiduciary outsourced to a data, any data protection related work to a data controller, there should be a contract, okay, where the data controller should give a proper instruction to the data processor, and data processor should abide to those instructions. So that is very, very important. So generally they should have a clauses on a data protection clauses, which is included as a part of a legal contract. It could be like a data controller can audit the data processor anytime. Okay, in the books and records. So all that will be the part of a data protection clauses. The data processor should not subcontract his work to a third person without getting the permission of a data controller or data fiduciary. So all these basic clauses will be included as a part of contract control. If he's subcontracting, then the subcontractor should also have a proper data security in accordance with the information security standards. Availability control, again, it is coming from CAA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which is part of the information security, whether the personal data are protected against any accidental loss or destruction. So we should have a proper storage location of the data, inventory backed up data. There should be, if you are working on a SharePoint or a shared drive, it should have a proper backup, incremental backup, daily backup, or a weekly backup. The location secured through proper admittance control. So people who are accessing the system should have a proper admittance control. Intended use control, or it could also be a segregation control. Say, for example, I collect data for a different purpose, and I should maintain it differently in the SharePoint or a share folder. It should not get mixed up. The server should also be segregated separately. Suppose I process Middle East data, I process Germany data. So it should be maintained separately even at a server level. So that's how the segregation control works out, or an intended use control. Organizational control, yeah. If I have a externals who is working, who is also having access to my company's personal data, there should be a proper data secrecy commitment which they have to sign, that they should not disclose this information outside. There should be a proper code of conduct, approved code of conduct. Of course, we all know about this BCR. If data moves from one country to another country within the same organization, the organization should have signed for the binding corporate rules. And of course, the organization should have a proper business conduct guidelines in place, where every employee should comply with the data protection requirements and abide to the law of land. Some examples I thought I can share which can lead to a data privacy breach. An employee receiving an offer letter of another employee. So this would commonly happen in an organization. These kind of risk or a breach can happen. Offer letters are given through a runner boy. If you see this promotion letters or confirmation letters, they use some housekeeping guys or a runner boys to get a signature from the managers. Technically, these are all the kind of risk which organization can face from the data privacy issues. Email from HR with the salary details. So some employee is applying for a visa process. So he wants his salary details from the HR letterhead or for the home loan process. So these information are being sent without proper encryption or security by HR. So that could also be one of the risks. Or loss or hacking. Okay, if the employee is having any corporate credit cards, there could be a loss of hacking of such credit cards. So that can also be a risk. And any confidential information like salary details, passport details, or a social security information are being sent without any proper encryption. So that can also be a risk. Leaving documents in the printer, so which is being unattended, personal files. So that also is one of the risks. Another thing is an employee sending a mass email. For example, is any kind of a marketing emails is sending to any vendors or customers. Generally, it is recommended, we should use the BCC option, not the 2 option, because another vendor or another customer should not know the email address of another person. So it's preferred that we use a BCC option. Generally, even outside the personal data or data privacy, we all use reply all. Okay, we don't see whom we are replying. So we should only reply to the authorized people. We should see who is there in the distribution list, whether the authorized people are authorized to receive such information. So we should never use reply all unless it is really required. Copy files to a personal drive, our D drive or a pen drive, to our laptop, where information is not required. Such also could be a data privacy breach issues. Lack of strong authentication, okay, for any application which stores personal data. I was sharing some of the controls, technical controls. So if there is if you don't have a proper two-factor authentication of passwords, or auto timeout functions, or if the server is not protected properly, so that could also be one of the issues which can lead to privacy breach. Third-party cloud services. So we all use this digital solutions where the data is there in the cloud server. The data center is usually outside India. So there could be a chance if you are using Amazon Cloud or Microsoft Azure, the server will be usually in US and other regions where the Indian citizen data will be residing in data center, which is outside India. That can also be a data localization issue, which we have to be aware of. So some do's and don'ts. What we can do, files having personal data should be password protected. Suppose if you're sending any kind of information which is having personal data, have a password protected of that file and share the password separately in a separate email to the user. So that's a good practice. Generally, try to keep in a lock and key condition. If you're working in an organization or if you're working as an HR, try to have the personal data in a lock and key position. Always use the need to know principle while sharing data. Follow good practices like masking of IP address. So if you're having an application, if you're developing an application which can store any kind of a personal information, try to mask the last 4 digits of the IP address so that the personal information is getting de-identified. So if the data is stored outside the country, try to have ensure encryption keys are available within the country limits. So I have taken this from the European Court of Justice when US was made as when they canceled the privacy shield, when US was made as an inadequate country. So what they told is if any data is being stored in the server of US, any European data, the encryption keys should be lying within the territorial limits of European Union. So that's how the European Court of Justice came with a verdict. Encrypt your laptop, okay, USB keeps, other portable medias. Personal data in a manual form should not in use, should be shredded. So that is also good practice. Some don'ts. Don't use any social media platform to transfer your files like Teams or WhatsApp. I think even officially, we all have a lot of WhatsApp group. We keep sharing a lot of personal information in WhatsApp. Try to avoid that, okay? Don't use any kind of a official chatbot tool to share any confidential information, which includes personal data or a sensitive personal data. Never store personal data in a personal folders. So that we should avoid that, doing that in kind of like hard drives or a pen drives. Never store any personal information, credit card details like Amazon, Flipkart. Even this happened to my friend where he has stored his credit card information in Amazon, okay, because they ask there is a feature where you can store the information. Please be aware, even personally I'm saying, because the information can be hacked. So don't send any marketing information to any customers or potential vendors using two field. Try to use BCC field. Okay, so that's it. Any questions? Or?
I just wanted to ask one thing, like while doing one of the assignments for FDPPI certification only, we were going through messaging apps. So I came to know that, sometimes countries in their official guidelines tell their employees to not use messaging apps which are not end-to-end encrypted, to ensure that whatever official communication, not involving, it involves personal data also otherwise, but to keep the messages secure, they advise that they should use end-to-end encrypted messaging apps. So I wanted to understand that, do companies generally identify messaging apps and advise the employees to use just a kind of messaging app than the others?
No, so if you see in our organization, we are not supposed to share any kind of, because personal data is coming under the category of confidential information, even if you consider as an information security standard. So you're not supposed to share any kind of information using a chat tool in Teams or something like that, which is not allowed, definitely not allowed. But you can share in OneDrive or any shared drive, but that shared drive should have been protected. I think there is a protection, private protection. It should not be it should not be open for a public protection. So unless if the drive is private protection, where it is accessed only by the respective department team, then the information can be shared. Okay, but generally I would recommend not to share any information in chat, any messaging apps of any organization. That is not allowed. Use the email. Try to encrypt the email while sharing the information. That is the best way.
So like you highlighted, whenever we are sharing information via email, I've read somewhere that, when entertaining the request from data subjects also, whatever information is shared back with them on their request, the companies are supposed to ensure that the emails are encrypted. So is it that the company has a system that emails remain encrypted, or the employee has to, push a button to encrypt the email and then send
there is
it?
an option that you can encrypt every outgoing emails by default, or you can also unencrypt. Okay, so because maybe it's a German company, so we already have a feature available in our official emails, so we can encrypt the emails. So the other person has to decrypt. So he should have a smart card, and then he can only use his card to decrypt the emails. So that is an additional feature we have. So we are supposed to encrypt any confidential information or a strictly confidential information when we are sharing to others. So even within the organization.
May I add something here?
Please.
Ma'am, there is also, there are features of public-private key encryptions also available, where a public key can be shared with the email. A recipient can simply decode it. There are central servers which help to do that with known algorithms. That is also possible, ma'am.
And Shalini, there is, I think each organization differs. So there is also an option called secured transmission of files. Okay, if I'm sending some information, say to the PF consultant. Okay, so so in such cases also there is a secured mode of transmission where I can exchange emails to the outsiders. So that way, it is a password protected, and the information goes only to that person. That cannot be hacked. So that kind of provision is also there. So again, these kind of things will be available in every organization, in my opinion.
All right. Mr. Anant, could we request you to join in and share with us your point of view on this? No, we can't hear you. Actually, Mr. Anant has written his points in the chat. I wish if he could join in and share. No, Mr. Anant, we cannot hear you. Okay, so should we read out from the chat only?
Yeah, please.
Okay, while Mr. Anant is trying to join in from another computer, I just had one more question. Like in maybe I don't remember exactly the Bahrain example. They said a sound relating to identifiable to a person. I don't remember the exact language. So would it whenever these identifiable informations are mentioned in different terms, we start to wonder, if the country wants to cover more in the Personal Data Act. So I just wanted to ask, would the sound include, if somebody has recorded songs and put on social media, or otherwise shared. So, or would it just include if, a sound recording has been used for a certain purpose by a company in a format like a biometric template format for a certain purpose? I cannot think about any specific purpose for which sound, could be used by companies to track people or use it in a way which could be potentially harmful.
I will just check and maybe I'll share in the group. Probably if I could get some more information on that point, I will try to share.
Thank you. Namit is saying Rajnikant's voice is trademarked. Okay. Any more questions, please? And if somebody wants to add to the discussion.
Srinivasan sir, this is Tripti here.
Please.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for a lovely presentation, sir. I have one question regarding a bit of a conflict. I'll split it in two parts. So most times all of us design our profiles, right? We have our, it could be company email or personal email. We have our signature where it has email ID, phone number, and we have a profile photo, across organizations. Now I am okay when I'm sending you an email. I understand that because it's my information. Now in forwards or reply alls, most times what happens is the same thing gets forwarded. Now this is the context I'm speaking. Why? Because now in some of the emails, what we got was customer wanted, a potential customer wanted existing customers' contact for checking reference. How am I as a vendor and, to hire my services. Now what has happened, typically you would take the emails or whatever in the tail or the PMO or somebody's and share them. Contracts have clauses saying if you are sharing, take consent, sometimes there, sometimes not there. Now my question is, in this case, if I share LinkedIn profile, that is available publicly. Now same thing, forwarding either to a customer who's out of organization, or in my first example, internally in forwarding where my photo, my phone number and things like that are going. I just want to hear your thoughts on this, sir, how to regulate or better manage this, because need to know sort of gets diluted, right? Because I am sending it, but where it will go forwarding in the chain is sort of difficult to control. So some organizational
your question is, you are saying you are sending to the vendor, what kind of information? LinkedIn profile. I didn't get that.
Yes. So I'm saying internally, it could be an email. Let's say you're my manager. I'm sending you my email. It has my now you have forwarded it to HR team, finance team and all saying whatever is Tripti's query, please answer. That is internal. Now in external example, I gave you that if it is a potential customer versus a existing customer. And instead of you sharing the details, I can say, please call Mr. So-and-so of this company and check. I will share their available LinkedIn profile, publicly available. Now, would this become a breach or not? Because LinkedIn is though personal information, but it is publicly available.
But you are sending without the consent of the other person. That's how
it's publicly available, right? Publicly available is usually an exception to confidentiality.
Correct.
I just want to hear thoughts. I just want to know in such situations how to handle it, because, I have got inquiry like this and we concluded that since it's publicly available, it may be done so, and started adding in the contract to say that, references may be taken.
On a personal note, I try to avoid, I may not do it on a personal level.
Srini, Ramesh here, just sharing my thoughts here. Tripti, in fact, this publicly available information is becoming a kind of big question mark today. Okay, in every literature, whether it is GDPR or whether it is Indian PDPB, the point here is that as close as possible, please try to take the consent. Go back to that particular person. If you are going to use this information, even if it is publicly available, is what everybody is trying to recommend today. There is no proper mechanism. There is no hard, fast rule exists at this point that, Even this question was discussed May 25th, 2018, when GDPR came into force. Now, what will happen to the data on May 24th, which is available in public? So more and more thoughts coming in here saying that if you are going to use anybody's data, even if it is available publicly, please go back and take the consent is what. But there is no hard and fast rule for me to prove section so-and-so or article so-and-so to you. Are you with me?
Yes, Ramesh, agreed. No, I just wanted to hear Mr. Srinivasan's view because he's done a comparison. So in case there is any other country which has...
I think he has answered it in from his company context, if I'm right. Yeah, Srini?
Correct.
Yes. I would resist doing that at official level, definitely.
Absolutely. No, even on the personal level.
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
May I add a point here?
Please, Shalini.
Like regarding the information which is publicly available, I've read in GDPR's guidance that, even there you need to see whether the user reasonably expects you to do so, right? Like Facebook has photographs of so many people. So if somebody tries to use those photographs, that's not reasonably expected, right, by the user. So only they expect their friends who they are connected with, could like or appreciate, but further use of the photograph is not reasonably expected. So that way it is not legal to do that. And suppose if a company is sharing the LinkedIn profile of a person for an employment which the user has requested, then the user is reasonably expecting the other person to use that information. So, but otherwise, it depends on the purpose for which that information is used, whether the use is valid under the law or not.
Ma'am, Shalini ma'am, there is a query here. Let's say somebody shares the profile, a LinkedIn profile, but by a link, not the personal details, but just a link. How about that? How about that scenario? Like, I mean, public links are basically not PII data, right?
No, but it contains, it's like a packet of personal identifiable information, right? So you are allowing access to the personal information.
No, I'm talking about the company's person who is trying to share the data, right? So instead of sharing the complete personal profile of the person can simply share the data, the link, right? Hyperlink of that person's profile.
If I understood your question, you are saying the nature of the personal identifiable information doesn't change. It remains personally identifiable information, even the link, because it's just a packet of personally identifiable information, right? So whatever applies to personal identifiable information in parts will apply to the packet as a whole as well, right? I mean,
but the person is not exactly sharing the personal information. Links are basically public links, right? I mean, I'm not very sure. Like,
no, that's what I meant to say, that, if you are sharing for a reasonably expected, in case of LinkedIn profile, for a reasonably expected purpose, then it remains valid. But if it is used for a purpose which is not reasonably expected by the user, then it is not valid. Then the user can, seek a recourse under law.
Yep. Okay.
Against the person who's misusing it. Against the person who's misusing it.
So Shalini, Ramesh here again. All of us here in the call, what we have discussed even as part of our PDPSI framework, okay? Please go back to the implementation specification number 34. Wherein we clearly talk about legacy and publicly available personal data. Okay, we clearly suggest that organizations shall adopt an appropriate policy to establish the legal basis for continuing the processing of personal data collected before the applicable law, as well as the data which are harvested from the public domain. So it all depends on your organizational policy, what kind of data. I'll just wind up by saying one quick data point here. For example, somebody comes to my office, they are sitting with me in front of me. That gentleman or gentlewoman leaves one visiting card on my table. Now that visiting card, after they left, I'm picking up the visiting card and I'm seeing some, potential market over there. Can I contact that person? I have not received the visiting card. I have not got the consent. These are all the questions which is coming up, haunting in every law. And it all depends on, from the organizational perspective, what kind of policy you want to put in place. I hope I'm able to make a point. I just remembered this implementation specification 34 for PDPSI, which is really talking about this bullet.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, Ramesh. I think I remember now, Ramesh, it was also mentioned by Navi sir, even if the act is coming by tomorrow, I think we should try to get a consent later on, right?
No, this is exactly as happened, as I said, with the GDPR. We have discussed enough in every forums. What's happening? What's happening? Am I eligible? Am I? No. I think many of the questions have got answered. Now, please, I would say, go back to your organizational policy, your technical measures, what you have, to what level you can catch that person as close as possible and take his consent. You are going to be in the safe hands. Full stop. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Right.
Can I add something to question of Namit?
Yes,
here,
sir,
what he explained is somebody shared his personal link, means just LinkedIn profile link. So here, according to me, he has consented to open that particular link, go through the details, because the person has shared that particular link. If somebody wants my reference, I'll just ask him, go and visit my LinkedIn profile by this particular link. So here, according to me, I have given my explicit consent to use or to go through the information which is available on that particular profile and use it for that specific purpose. So it is here I am giving the consent to use that publicly available information. So here, according to me, I cannot say this information cannot be used, because here it is my consent to that particular link. This is my.
Oh, sir, if I can just jump in, actually, that is exactly the gap that I got caught in. But the person is not. For example, today, if it just says for any references, talk to sales@abc.com. Now, sales head at abc.com is Tripti. So now sales head LinkedIn profile has gone. It is not me sending my LinkedIn profile. It is my customer sending it to a potential customer because it is publicly available. But Ramesh sir, I take your point on that. It boils down to policy. And another point I want to make here is contracts are between two companies, right? So when we are making these clauses, I come from the legal team, so which is why something that I did is I put in a point there to say that the people you are mentioning, the company has their consent for allowing this business purpose to go ahead. So that it is companies owners to get consent from their existing employees or designations to make sure that the correct information is being passed on.
So I have a point here, meaning if somebody is trying to reach out to a particular person, I'm sure they would have Googled that person before asking the company, and because they are not getting enough response from that person's LinkedIn or whichever social media profile, they are trying to reach out to the company for more details, that they want to speak to him, give us their mobile number or give their some email ID because we've written to them and they've not responded. Something like that, right? That would be the intention rather than asking the company for a public social media profile.
Ideally, yes. Operationally, we all know we use all resources at the same go, right? And it's difficult to monitor consent at every level with every channel of communication that you open.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That why would, suppose if I'm looking out for a particular individual, I would first try and Google that person up and try and establish contact. Because I'm not able to reach out to that person, or I've written to the person, not responded to my email, then I'm trying to say that I'm trying to reach out to this person. Can you give me some additional information? If I'm going to get the same information which Google is going to give me, why would I reach out to the company?
No, sir. It is. This is in this case, if you know the person. Now, if I just tell you, pick up legal officer of this company. Now that legal officer happens to be me with my profile, right? You don't know me or you have not reached out to me. You're reaching out to the designation, but to the designation or to the role, the personal information is attached. That is the challenge.
No, but then the board number is the required. I mean, if somebody calls the board number of the company and says, I want to talk to your legal head, the receptionist will direct to that person, right?
So, I mean, I was more speaking from emails and forwarding. See, where it is within direct parties control, it is easy. Where you ask me and I am sending you my information, that is not an issue because it's me sending. So inherent consent. Problem is where it's coming through forwards or like this, where you are sort of passing on information without having a check in place.
Okay.
That's why I gave a context of
Sure.
current customer and potential customer, or even internal email where we just forward it and then that person's information goes further.
Sure.
So
I have one question for
Mr.
Mr. Srinivasan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
I just want to thank you all for inputs.
Yes, so just wanted Mr. Srinivasan's views on using BCC that you mentioned, because a lot of companies' email policies do not allow use of BCCs from an ethics perspective as well. So why would you suggest that a BCC be used?
No, see, here the purpose is different, right? Say, if I'm sending some sales letter information, then I prefer not to, I prefer use BCC. For example, I use BCC for reasons like, say an employee has taken an assessment, okay, and some have not cleared, okay, then I try to communicate those information, because other employees should not know who has cleared or who has not passed.
No, absolutely.
Some
Absolutely.
employees
So
not taken a
Excel
training.
Formula,
Sorry?
no, an Excel formula will also allow you to send individual mails with all those separate details of
individual.
them, right?
Even for example, an employee has not taken a training which is overdue, for example, and I want to send an email to all the overdue reminders, then still I use the BCC because I don't want other employees to know who has not gone through that. But generally, that's what the recommendation. So because the other vendor or customer should not know the email address of the other person.
No, I get your point. Okay. Sure.
Deepak, on a lighter side, just wanted to share my one of my experience. There was a certification body. There is a certification body which is sending a mail on course on lead auditor course on PIMS, 27701. Can you believe almost around 200 email IDs in the two?
Right.
I was also part of it. I was taken back, believe me. 200 email IDs and the certification body sending the mail on the 5 days lead auditor course on 27701, which it talks about privacy information management system. I said, God bless you guys. That's all I can say. Yeah. 250 email IDs.
So I get it. So yeah. obviously those profiles have not been told the appropriate use of email. But that's one of the things as well that, yeah. BCC also offends a lot of people that, if you put me on a BCC,
it all based on what we are talking. Context is very important. Simple. Yeah. Where we are going to use or where we are going to apply. Simple. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Shalini, madam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Anant, I really wanted you to come in and speak about what you wanted to share, but we are running short on time.
No, can you hear me now?
Many of the... Sorry?
Is my audio okay? Because last time also...
Yes.
Fine.
Yes, you're audible.
Yes, next week or